Hey guys, welcome back to more Karen boss stories. In this story, a ridiculous boss demands I work for free and threatens to get me deported when I refuse to do so. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the title story. So I am from Bangladesh, where I grew up most of my life. My parents sent me to a really good school and I managed to get good enough grades to actually go to college in England and get a degree, thinking I could come back and get a better job in my home country. At the time though, the job market here was just bad and I was going to need to work in another country. Being able to get a work visa and go back to England or even across the sea to the United States is a long and hard process. I did not have that kind of time since I had no money, so I went with an option that allowed me to get somewhere faster. That meant going to India and trying to get a job there, since they had a lot of big companies due to the fact that other countries outsourced their work. My degree was in computer science, so the fact that many tech companies used India for cheaper labor meant more job opportunities, and it wasn't long before I got to India and managed to get a job at one of these places. Luckily, due to my degree, I did not get stuck in a tech support role where I would have to sit in a cubicle on the phone all day. I got a role working higher up doing actual programming, and despite the very long hours, I was doing okay for myself. Money could always be better, but I was surviving and not living in total poverty, which was my main goal at the time. The issue became that my boss was a horrible woman that, as time went on, became more and more demanding. She is what a lot of you would call a Karen, but that does not fit the typical white stereotype of one. She was the Indian version though, which involved wearing as much gold as possible to show herself as being better than everybody below her. She was very demanding of the workers, and I found especially the ones like me that were not Indian born. I tried my best to do what she wanted from me and keep my head down, but it started to get unreasonable. At first she claimed that there were not enough people working and piled extra work up on top of my own without extending any of my deadlines. I was basically doing the work of two people, but of course only getting paid for one. Eventually, I could not keep up or finish everything at the end of a workday. When I started to not be able to finish my work, she insisted that I just worked longer hours and basically stayed until it was done. It was exhausting, and I assumed getting my paycheck would make everything feel better and worth it. I could go get some groceries and have a relaxing weekend off. That is not what happened though, for two reasons. The first was, she called me up demanding that I show up on the weekend, which I was not meant to be working. She wanted me there 7 days a week, which is heavily excessive. The bigger issue was that I looked at my paycheck and saw that not only was I not paid for all the extra hours she forced me to stay and work, but I was not even paid for all of the hours that I should have normally been paid for. She was paying me, claiming that I was working only like 4 hours a day, so I was getting next to nothing. She was not there that weekend and I didn't want to lose my job, so I just worked the weekend and waited to speak to her on Monday, thinking it was a mistake and she would fix it. Monday came and honestly, I felt like garbage after working so many hours that last week. The first couple of weeks were not as bad, but still a lot of hours. Me, excuse me ma'am, I think there's a problem with my paycheck. Karen, what do you want? Me, it only says I've been working 4 hours a day. I work 8, not to mention all the overtime I've been putting in. Karen, it's not my fault, you don't finish on time and needed to stay late. Me, you cannot make me work and not pay me. Karen, you foreigners are also greedy. You're lucky to get what I give you. Me, I'm not gonna work for free. Karen, you will do what I tell you to do. Otherwise I will call the police on you and have you deported. I will tell them you steal from the company and they will believe me over some stupid immigrant worker. I got scared from her threats, not knowing what she could actually do to me or not, since I was not a citizen. If I got deported, it meant I couldn't work for a different company here that would treat me fairly. Plus she was threatening to tell lies to the police and I just did not know what I could do in that moment, so I agreed to stay and work. When I got home, I started doing research on the local laws and what an employer can do and cannot do. She owned the entire place, so there was nobody above her I could go to and complain to. She was as high up as it got. It turned out that she was breaking more rules than I knew about and doing it to many of the workers that probably did not know their rights either. As a worker, it didn't matter what country I came from, she still had to follow the rules, and she clearly was not. For one, she was not giving the right amount of breaks to people based on how long they were working. We had people working 12-hour shifts and only getting a single 30-minute break to eat a meal during that time. Second, she was obviously letting people work too many hours without letting them have time off that they were entitled to get. Third was the fact that she did not really like to allow people to go to the bathroom very often, telling them not to drink so much water instead. Keep in mind that this was India, so it was hot and you kind of need to drink water. The place was a little cool due to the computers, but it was still hot. Those things combined with the obvious lying about hours and making people work for free was more than enough information to send to the government. I quit the next day as I learned I had time to find a new job and would not be immediately deported or something. She never did end up calling the police on me luckily, and I found a job that treated me fairly. As for Karen, she got a surprise inspection both at the physical company and as well looking into her records of employees. It was found that she had more people working than were on payroll, and they could clearly see that she was lying about the hours people were working and the fact that they were not getting paid for it. For most it was at least a little bit suspicious, but for anybody who was not Indian, it was very obvious as she barely paid them, probably threatening them as well when they complained not knowing their rights. It turned out during her inspection I heard that the bathroom doors were locked, which is something she did sometimes when she felt they were being overused. She got totally shut down from all the violations and lost her entire business. I don't know where she went from there, but I was happy to see that she was getting what she deserved. I'm glad that I don't have to work for her anymore, and I'm now at a job where I'm not forced into working overtime and actually get paid for the full day of work that I do. Trying to work in another country can be hard, and I think anybody that does should look up the laws regarding that line of work. I'm positive people get screwed in every country simply by not knowing what they're entitled to and taking advantage of it. If you work in a country that you're not native to even now, go look up the laws and make sure that you are being treated fairly. And now let's move on to a story from r/ripe stories posted by user Amarok26 titled "His Tears Were Compensation Enough for Me." And by the way, I would very much appreciate it if you could like the video and post a comment if you want to support me. Thank you so much in advance. So a bit of backstory. Growing up I was bullied through nearly every grade in school. Because the schools never protected me, I became the type of person that does not really seek out help when dealing with a bully. I just give what I get. I was hired as a nursing home working in the kitchens. The manager I had was the best, the crew we had working there at the time were kind and encouraging, and I was very happy there. That manager left to chase his dreams. We were sad to see him go, but supported his choice. The new manager was not bad. Shortly before this manager left, I lost both my parents to cancer during the pandemic. At this point I'd been working here for almost 4 years. Now for the real story though, the third manager was a Kevin. Kevin had very clear ideas of how he wanted his kitchen set up and how it would work. I have short arms and cannot reach the top shelf to lift heavy items safely, nor could a couple of my coworkers whom were short. So when he insisted the older needs to be used first, be stored on the top shelf, I told him that half his staff would not be able to reach it up there. Kevin rudely proclaimed that if they could not reach, they need to find another job. The three of us who couldn't reach just shrugged and used the newer milk we could reach. When Kevin discovered this, he raged at us for not getting the older milk first. Kevin's boss came in and called me over. He asked why we were not using the old milk and letting it go bad while we used the newer milk. I explained what Kevin wanted, my reminder of our limitations and his reaction to it. He was chewed out, I made an enemy. Kevin and I ended up butting heads so many times over the course of a year or so that there really is no way for me to tell the whole story. I'll just tell you some highlights of some of the most notable things we ended up fighting over. After working for him for a couple months, my parents have been gone for only a few months at this point and my wounded heart was still very raw and sore. I had a tooth break while at work. The pain was beyond what I had experienced before, but as the most experienced person in the kitchen, I couldn't leave until Kevin got there to take over. After a couple hours, I was gingerly attempting to eat something on break when I get a call on my personal cell phone from Kevin. I was in pain and I can see his name on the call ID, so I answered with a rather quiet pain, "What?" Kevin responded, "Is that how your mother taught you to answer the phone?" My annoyed response was, "No, this is how I answer the phone when I am in excruciating pain. Now what do you want?" Kevin said, "Your mother." I hung up on him. I never found out what he wanted. And insulting my recently deceased mom was his favorite go-to insult whenever he was losing an argument with me. Kevin would be the one to put the delivered food orders away, but he never had the box labels facing out. So if any of the staff needed something, we were faced with a wall of blank boxes. We would have to check every box one at a time or ask for his help to find it. If we asked Kevin for help, he would say that we needed to learn how to read or we needed glasses. One day he told me to get the fish for dinner that night. He claimed it was next to the box of hot dogs. I went into the freezer and was faced with a room of blank boxes. By sheer luck, I found the fish in the first box box that I checked. I carried the box out and he asked if it was the box of fish next to the hot dogs. I said I couldn't tell since the labels are not facing out. Kevin said in a mocking tone that I must not be able to read. That I must be blind or stupid, or maybe I should get glasses because I obviously could not read the box. I said, "Oh really? Come here." I lead him into the freezer where he points to the box next to the space I just emptied and says, "See, the hot dogs are right there. Obviously you're too stupid to read." Using my finger to show where I was reading, I read aloud to him all the words on the outward facing side. "Keep frozen at 0 degrees Fahrenheit" and the name of the supplier. I turned to him and said in the same mocking tone he had used on me, "You're seeing things that are not here. Maybe you're hallucinating. Maybe you should go see a doctor," before stepping around him and walking off to finish my work. He started storing the boxes with the labels facing out. I'm a large girl, but I'm strong and healthy. Kevin had been on a diet for a couple months and was showing off. He announced to all the staff, "Don't I look amazing? Don't I look great? When I first started my diet, I looked like you," and he pointed at me. Another time he called me fat without saying fat was a little known day here in the States called National Chocolate Day. By some fluke, the dessert for dinner that night was chocolate cake. I asked Kevin if I could make a special cake for our residents tonight. Instead of him making the plain one, he said it was fine by him. I love to bake and see people enjoy the desserts I make. It makes me so happy, and I'm a good cook. I don't eat a lot of baked goods and I don't care for the taste of chocolate. I baked and sliced the cake onto plates before I drizzled chocolate syrup over each slice to make it look and taste extra chocolatey. When finished, one of my coworkers commented on how happy I looked and how yummy the cake looked. I said I love to bake and Kevin called out, "You sure look like it." I was communicating with a coworker, alerting them what allergies to watch out for during the upcoming meal. This way we don't accidentally kill one of our residents. Kevin sticks his head around the corner and started talking to me. As he had not called me and I was passing on important information, I assumed he was talking to someone else. He yells my name and asks if my mother taught me to be so rude to ignore people when they were talking to me. My response was, "No, but apparently your mother taught you to rudely interrupt a conversation without saying excuse me." This stopped the 10-month stretch of his insulting my deceased mom. One of the things that would drive me nuts though the most was Kevin would continuously add more things for me to do. Most of these things would not be responsibilities for my shift. For example, Kevin would insist that when I was cooking, I also had to serve the meals. If the cook also serves the meals, there's no time to make dinner before the shift ends. Let alone prepare the meat for the next day, which was part of the cook's responsibilities. Leave the kitchen to deliver things to the units. Cook is not supposed to leave kitchen to prevent contamination. Clean serving trays, pots, pans, etc. And then he would report me to HR for leaving at the end of my shift without finishing my job. HR would ask why I did not finish and I would list off all the things Kevin would insist I do, and what shift was actually responsible for those tasks. It hurt my work ethic to leave work undone, but HR told me that when Kevin does this to me, just leave at the normal end of my shift and simply tell or leave a list of what was incomplete when my shift ended. Anything I did not finish, Kevin had to do. Kevin's wife got a job that caused Kevin to have to stay home most mornings to get his kids to school. In an attempt to hold out an olive branch, I offered if he changed 4 of my workdays a week to half days, 6 AM to 10 AM, then I would come into work every morning so he could get his kids to school. He thanked me and promised me that he would honor the deal. I worked a full day Sunday, as Kevin always has weekends off. Monday was normally one of my days off. I came in at 6 AM and worked to get breakfast and most of lunch done. Kevin came in and I asked him if he wanted today to be one of my half days. Kevin said no, he needed me to finish the shift. I said okay, but that means I'll only work one more full day this week. Kevin says okay. I worked Tuesday until Kevin came in. I asked him if he wanted me to go home now as one of my promised half days. Kevin said that this was one of my normal work days, that I could not leave until I was done. I reminded him that if I worked a full day today, I would be doing only half days the rest of the week. Kevin then nods and says okay. I work until 10 AM on Wednesday, pick up my belongings and stop by Kevin's office, and while his back is still turned from me, rattled off what was done and what wasn't, and that I would see him tomorrow. Kevin says, "Where do you think you're going? You still have half of your shift to finish." I say, as per the verbal agreement we made last week, I would be working 4 half days a week and 3 full days a week. I worked the last 3 days full days. I've completed my work for a half day and I'll be working 3 more half days this week. Kevin says that I cannot do that, he needs me here to work. I say that if he wants to go back to giving me 2 full days off a week and work 5 full days a week, we can do that. I will just need to know what my 2 days off will be this week. Kevin then raises his voice and declares that I won't be getting any days off this week because I promised that I did not need any and I would be doing a full day every day. I calmly said I would not and walked out of his office. Kevin called down the hall that I would not have a job if I left. I did not leave, I went to his manager instead. I told his boss about my attempt to mend the rift between us and how Kevin was trying to turn my attempt to help him into an opportunity to not allow me time off. His manager told me to go home and to take the next 2 days off so I could work a full day on Saturday. He also told me I was not to try helping him again. The last and biggest thing that happened was that I'd been looking for another job since the first manager had left. The first manager had stood up for the kitchen staff as they were the scapegoats for anything that went wrong in the place when it came to many things, even if we were not involved in the first place. I hated the unfairness, but I was content with it as that first manager would take our side and defend us against the other departments. The second manager did not seem to care either way. Kevin actively threw us under the bus. Most of the kitchen staff had left at this point, not willing to deal with him anymore. All the people he had hired spent maybe a day or 2 there before just not showing up for work anymore. The few that were left were fairly close. I told a couple co-workers that I had applied for a couple of interesting jobs that morning, and Kevin proudly proclaimed, "You know, all these places you've been applying to? I've been calling them and telling them what a horrible person you are and how terrible of a worker you are. You won't be able to get another job unless I allow it." I stared at him in shock for a moment. "You know that is a crime in this state, don't you?" "No, it's not," sneers Kevin. "Yes, it is. I could sue you even if you joke about that at a workplace." I say, still shocked. Kevin huffed, "You cannot do anything about it, even if it is illegal, which it is not," and walked away. The first moment I walked into the HR office and told them what had happened. HR shut the door and interrogated me. Who would have overheard him saying that if he said exactly that, etc.? The company officer sent a rep to come talk to me a couple days later and question me again. The rep spoke with all the witnesses that day as well. Shortly after, I was hired by a new company as a security guard and handed in my 2 weeks notice. Before I left work that day, one of the managers from another department that I was friends with told me that Kevin had been fired. They said that they saw him leaving the building sobbing. I was also told that the company office staff was terrified that I would sue because of what Kevin had said. I said Kevin's tears was all the compensation I needed. The company did not break the law or offend me. That was all just Kevin. The company should not have to suffer for one jerk's stupidity. Wherever Kevin ended up, I hope he learned his lesson. I left that job nearly 2 years ago now and doing better away from him. As anyone that was working at that place during these events would very likely know, exactly the place and people who were involved, I ask please don't say the names of the real place or people involved. I still harbor no animosity and I don't want this story to cause any problems for anyone. I just wanted to vent. And yeah guys, I gotta say, Kevin was probably one of the worst bosses / co-workers I've ever heard of, and I'm so happy that this douchebag got fired. By the way though, I'm curious, for all the listeners here, have you ever had a person at work as terrible as this Kevin? Let us know in the comments, I'm very curious. The next one is titled, Yep, Married. A little backstory, I'm a painter, no, not a house painter, but someone who paints on canvases. I paint landscapes and only landscapes, and I've been doing it for a few years now. I get my paint from a hobby store that has just about everything, and it is a well-known local store that changed hands in the last couple of years. On the day this story is about, I was in my usual cargo shorts, which I wear year-round even when there is snow outside, tennis shoes and a nice pullover shirt, think fancy t-shirt with a collar. Oh, and by the way, I'm like 60-ish, I had not had a haircut in months and also had not shaved in like a week, so I was rather scruffy looking. Think a clean homeless guy with clean clothes, and that is a big thing with my wife as she insists that I don't leave the house looking like I've lived in my clothes for a week. As you might guess, I'm a messy painter and I tend to get paint on my clothes, so I change into something clean and without any rips or tears before leaving the house. I was looking at some brushes on an end cap, that part of the shelves at each end of the aisle, when this woman clears her throat. Now, I get stuff in my throat and have a rattle sound when clearing, so my brain just filtered out the sound and I moved a little to one side and closer to the end cap in case I was in the way. Once again came that throaty sound like a frog choking on an oversized cricket while trying to sing. This time I look at the source of that sound and find a woman, maybe 5'2", a little thick with a short fake blonde haircut. I think the ladies call it a bob. A cart with some plastic plant foam bricks in it and raised eyebrows. Now, the uniform here is black pants and a store polo shirt of any number of colors. Oh, and each and every employee has a black apron on except for management. It's a pretty good sized store and the only one of its kind for an hour or two in any direction, so the store monopolizes the region. Cheaper prices can be found in the big city, but that is almost 2 hours away, and by the time you have spent the gas to get there and back, you have not really saved a whole lot. Now that you know the backstory, the scene played out like this. Me is the old gnome looking guy, CL is crazy lady, the assistant manager is Judy, and the manager is Katie. Me, is there something wrong with your throat? I asked a little concerned. CL, no, there's nothing wrong with my throat. What is wrong is you just standing there instead of helping paying customers. Me, I said, instantly recognizing the Karen in the wild from the many tales I've heard over the years. You think that I work here? CL, no duh, I see you in here all the time. I know you work here. I'm in here because I buy things, I said. CL, yeah, and the other day I saw that you got an employee discount, so I absolutely know you work here, so help me find my stuff. With a faint smile, I said, stuff? You need to go to the stuff mart. I nearly doubled over with laughter as her brow became a maze of lines as her 2 working brain cells spun crazily inside her cranium trying to figure out stuff mart and whether there actually might be a place called stuff mart or if I was pulling her leg. Then she waved her hand through the air as if clearing it of smoke and said, never mind, you help me now. I looked down at my cargo shorts and then said, okay, for the sake of the argument, let's say I do work here. Obviously, I'm not wearing the proper uniform, so this must be my day off, and such that would mean I'm not working today. So tell me again, why would I help you if I'm not working today? CL, because you work here, she screeched and stomping her foot. Me, but don't even the peons get days off when they don't have to work? And now with a really screeching voice, the crazy lady yells, if you don't help me right this minute, I'm going to get you fired. And then came the mantra of all Karens, get me your manager. I could hear the clippity-clop of dress shoes clattering across the tiled floor at warp speed and knew help was soon to arrive. I reached over and picked up a paintbrush and said, this is a paintbrush, you know, these fine bristles are all natural and can help bring your painting to life. CL looked at me with wide eyes and a mouth open and prepared for the early arrival of many flying insects should they happen to be landing, and this brought on a 2-foot stomp. What? What are you babbling about? I want you to find my things, she shouted just as Judy and Katie rounded the corner of an aisle to see what all the shouting was about. Me? Oh, but where do you suppose they could be? I feigned innocence. Judy spoke first. What is going on here? Before life on this earth could draw a single breath, CL let out a string of, this stupid worker won't help me, has been rude to me, attacked me with that paintbrush, and I want the manager, and I want him fired for being too stupid to be working. They should have laws about people being too stupid to have jobs. I want my things found and I want them for free for dealing with such an incompetent imbecile. I know the owner and he will fire all of you if you don't help me. Judy looked back at me and then covered her mouth with her hand and turned her face to keep from laughing. Katie, who is in her 40s and looks to be in her 20s, suppressed a chuckle and walked right up to me. She ran her finger down my cheek and said, you know, if you stay a little while, I might take you home with me. We could have a lot of fun, you and I. What? Cried CL, whose face went beet red, and she took a step back from her cart while Judy ran off, doing her best to not laugh. That sounds like an employee discount I want to explore, I said, seeing the knowing look in Katie's eyes. Oh my, what is going on here? CL screamed as though she was watching a murder being committed right in front of her. Are you serious? You! I want someone to call the owner right now, right this damn minute. This kind of behavior will not be tolerated in this store. I will have you both fired right damn now. Katie and I are about the same height, and when Katie kissed my ear, CL just started hopping around like a mad rabbit, stomping both her feet into the floor. The girl on the register and Judy came rushing to us. Judy with the store phone said she was calling the owner. CL grabbed the phone out of Judy's hand and was running in circles waiting for the call to go through. Then Katie's phone rang and, don't go anywhere you, she purred to me. Katie answered the phone while looking at CL dead in the eyes. Yeah, I'm the manager and I'm the owner. And yeah, this is my husband, and you know what? I don't want your business. I don't want you in my store. And I don't want to sell you anything, and I don't want your money. I do ban and I will ban anyone and everyone who is rude to one of my employees, and you are banned. You will leave or I will call the police and have you arrested for accosting my husband. And oh yeah, he gets an employee discount because I'm the owner and I can give that discount to anyone I choose. But oh, the CL was having none of it. Oh, this is BS. You just called her cell. I want the owner and I want the owner here now. Katie looked at Judy and asked, have you called them yet? Yeah, Judy said, they are on their way. A minute went by with the CL stomping on the ground when two of our local officers came around the end aisle. Both officers knew Katie and Judy as they often got stuff from their wives on the way home from their shift, and so they rushed the CL just as she threw the phone at me, hitting me in the chest. Both of the police officers were of the family pack variety and stood well over 6 foot. They manhandled the CL pretty easily and got handcuffs on her. One took her outside and Katie told the other that she just wanted her trespassed, and knowing my wife like everybody in town does, they did not even ask me if I wanted to press charges. Katie was the boss and what she says goes. I took Katie around the waist and said, "You can be quite the vixen when you want to be, can't you?" She looked at me with soft eyes and said, "Nobody messes with my husband except me, and in my own store to boot." Note, Katie and I have been married since she was 20 something and I was 40 something. It was not love at first sight thing, it was a gradual meeting of the minds and meeting of the hearts. We were neighbors and just saw each other often, and then we started having drinks at each other's houses until we finally kissed. It was that first kiss that got the snowball rolling down the hill, and a year later we were married. Her family was not really happy with her marrying an older man, and they let us know it at every opportunity, so we moved to a different town in a faraway state. My family had thought that I had lost my mind, and it was a relief to be so far away from them too. I had never married up to that point, and while it is hard to explain, after that first kiss we just knew right then and there that we would one day we'd be married and began to plan for it. I had saved up quite a bit of money from my paintings and we both worked, me at a forge and her in retail. I sold my house and that left us with a nice little nest egg, so that when the store went on the market, Katie jumped at it and she's been running that store for over a decade now. Her income was enough that I could quit the forge and paint full-time and be a house husband for our 2 kids who are now both out of high school. Our marriage now is stronger than it ever has been, and our oldest is planning her own wedding. My wife has a number of stories about Karens and chats in the wild, and I might write up some of those in the future if folks like this. And yeah, Ripe Stars, it definitely sounds like OP's wife is an absolute badass, and I for sure would appreciate it if my wife or my girlfriend or whatever would make so much money that I could be a stay-at-home dad or something. I would have nothing against that, let me tell you. Although, then again, I mean technically I already work from home, so it's not really like I have to go to the office every day or something. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.